This morning Andrew was talking about, if you like, a macro perspective on the issue of how do we engage in a low carbon economy, how do we do business. What I want to do now is look from a kind of perspective from within a company, maybe it's a startup, maybe it's a large company, and say, okay, how can we think about what opportunities there are specifically for us. What I'm going to do is look at a few different example strategies that you can use and give some examples of companies or technologies that are using them. So first of all, I think this is something that Jonathan has already said, but this is one of my favourite quotes. I've used it often from the editor of the Harvard Business Review. So basically, really, we must think about climate change not as just something that's going to happen and go away. It's something that's going to reshape the economy in as fundamental a way as globalization has over the past 10 or 20 years. It's going to reshape it again and again over the next 20, 30, 40 years. So the business climate will change because of climate change, and businesses that don't grab the nettle will probably suffer as time goes on. So I'm going to talk about 5 different strategies for success, jumping on and using different examples in each area. Jumping on a big bandwagon, jumping carefully, creating a new bandwagon, developing enabling services, thinking of low carbon as part of a broader package, and finally, anticipating future needs. So I'm going to use examples from each of those and talk about how maybe, what opportunities there are in those spaces. So let's look about a big bandwagon. So obviously, you guys are already very familiar with the fact that if we look at renewable energy, it is a big bandwagon, which is rolling fairly strongly already, and it's likely to pick up over time. So both the EU and China have committed to 20% renewable power by 2020, and for us to deliver that will require substantial investment and substantial build power. So the EU has announced that it plans to invest, it aims to invest 50 billion euros in energy R&D over the next 10 years, and a significant part of that is going to be in renewables. 6 billion wind, 16 billion solar, and 9 billion into bioenergy. So substantial investment is intended. However, having said this, there's a study that was done in the US which suggests that the recession could cut the solar panel industry in half by the end of next year. So just simply by moving into renewable energies, it doesn't guarantee you success, particularly during the recession. So, what can you do? If you're going to jump onto a big bandwagon, I can't say that. If you're going to do it, how do you do it carefully? So there's a couple of different ways. The first of all is to think about what technology you have and improve the state of the art. It's not good enough just to build another plant to manufacture if the demand has already been satisfied, particularly with regard to solar power. So if we look at this as an example of company BrightSource. BrightSource have looked at how they can improve the state of the art with concentrated solar power. They're basically developing mirrors which are more effective at reflecting and slower and cheaper to build, together with towers for capturing that energy, which are far more integrated and require less water and therefore can be deployed more easily in desert environments. And so they, as a result of the work they've been doing, they have received quite substantial investment from Google. Google is basically placing investment on this to see what they get out of it in the future. So, improving the state of the art, make sure you have IP. If you're going to jump on a big bandwagon, if you're going to do that, then make sure that you can improve the state of the art substantially. Another approach, try something different. This is Magen, it's a Canadian company. What they're looking at is how you can have basically turbines which are placed on balloons up in the low kind of air flow, but where there is a constant wind flow. So they're trying to capture the energy of the jet stream. And so this is something that hasn't really been tried up to now. They've got some prototypes. And so by trying to find alternative sources, you're competing a different way from existing providers. And so they might be able to find alternatives. And so next, trying something even more different, this is Avetech. This is another Canadian company. Avetech is thinking about how can we generate artificial tornadoes, and how can we use the power generated from artificial tornadoes to generate electricity, generate energy. And so this is one of their prototypes where they've generated an artificial tornado and generating some degree of power from it. Basically, they believe it will be possible to generate an artificial tornado, you need a heat source on the ground. And so cooling towers are an ideal heat source. You could use your cooling towers from existing power stations, build an artificial tornado on top of them, and then power turbines to generate extra electricity. So I don't know how people would feel about having artificial tornadoes on top of a nuclear power station cooling tower. That might not go down well. But nonetheless, there are opportunities again. So I will say at this point maybe that I'm neither advocating any of these technologies nor suggesting you invest in them. That's quite clear. So that is jumping on a big bandwagon. So either make sure that you have IP which enables you to do better what people are already doing, or try something completely different which allows you access to power sources which other people aren't exploiting. So let's look at the next one, help create a new bandwagon. So Andrew mentioned this morning about the non-CO2 emissions. And if we look at, the thing about the big bandwagon is there's already a lot of money being poured into it, and people are using that money. Lots of money from both the private sector and the public sector. If we look at where the money is not going now, but if we look at the scale of the problem is equally substantial, then non-CO2 emissions are very significant. So in the case of the UK, if you look at the consumption-based climate emissions of the UK, this is not just CO2, but other gases as well, we find that food is responsible for about 20%, according to some figures. This was from Surrey University calculated this. Much of this is non-carbon stuff, methane from animals, nitrous oxide from fertilizers. And that means that these things will be completely untouched by the move to low-carbon power sources, etc. This is an area that will be completely untouched. And at the moment, it receives very little government attention, government funding, and incentives to people to engage. But I believe that it's very likely to change. There's another reason, that is that methane is a gas that has a very strong greenhouse gas impact, but it's also one that burns quickly. So CO2 has a slow burn effect over a long period of time. Methane has a very strong burn very quickly. So if you take methane out of the atmosphere, the cooling effect on the planet is demonstrated far more quickly. So it's an effective way of cooling the planet, or warming the planet less, is to remove methane, because that you have an impact very quickly. So as a result of that, my belief is there'll be a lot more attention on agricultural emissions. So how can you reduce them? Okay, first of all, methane capture and storage. Here we have bioenergy solutions in California. They are collecting cow excrement and using it to, effectively using the methane generated to produce energy. And they're basically saying there's two value added here. First of all, the fact that you're not releasing the methane into the atmosphere, and also the fact that you're producing, if you like, renewable energy. So there's two wins there. I would say, so that is good. In fact, there are other companies in the US who have received carbon credits for putting caps over industrial farms and capturing the methane that's released by the cows. There is an issue about this, and that is that if you just capture the cow waste product, that is a very small part of the methane emissions of a cow. So even though their sales pitch says we're going to solve, this thing, in fact it's really a renewable energy play, because in terms of methane emissions, most of the emissions from a cow comes out the front end of a cow, not out the back end. Okay, so anything that's just collecting the cow fecal matter is not going to do the job. So they fail on the small bandwagon test. They can jump on the big bandwagon instead. So let's look at an alternative. Kangaroos. Kangaroos have cool digestion systems. Kangaroos can digest food without producing methane. They also digest it more effectively, efficiently, so they turn food into meat more efficiently than cows because they're not producing methane. So Queensland is investigating the use of, can they transfer the bacterial cultures in kangaroo stomachs into cattle, and as a result have, if you like, cattle with kangaroo intestines, and as a result reduce the amount of methane, possibly eliminate. Kangaroos produce almost no methane. So this isn't a bioengineering play in terms of, cross between kangaroos and cows. It's actually trying to produce a different culture inside the cow's intestines. Another approach that's been used to do that is actually with foodstuffs. People in Germany are trying to produce pellets which can be fed to cows containing certain foodstuffs which will help them digest.